When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, welcome back to the Grease Comedy YouTube channel. Today's video, we are going to be doing a kind of a what-if scenario, and something that I've kind of thought about, because there's this suggestion, right? Catelyn kind of does, like, what if we formed a great council and revealed all this information that Joffrey, Tom, and Myrcella are all bastards, and whatnot. So, in this video, we're going to talk about what if that had happened at a different point than when Catelyn had suggested it? What if it had actually happened a bit earlier? So, in this scenario, we're going to say that before Robb becomes King of the North, before Renly dies, before all this happens, like before the most part the war actually begins, what if there was a great council assembled? What if maybe Old Town, or what if Renly's strategy instead may have been called a great council? Now, I don't think this is a good idea if you're Renly, but let's just go with this scenario. For some way, this has to happen for this video to occur. So maybe Tywin, seeing that, okay, the North is against us, Stannis is against us, Renly and the Tyrells are against us, everybody's against us, war's not looking good. What if we call a great council and just try to sway people? Tywin uses his perceived power, and a great council is called. So that'll be the topic of the video. And before we get into it, if you guys like to like, subscribe, and comment for more of this type of A Song of Ice and Fire content, please do. It helps the channel grow. People that might like this content as well. Alright, so let's get to this great council. So let's say there's a great council. It's at Harrenhal. It makes sense because it's in the middle of the country. It makes sense for pretty much everybody to go there. So we have this great council. Now, right away, there would be three major factions that would be competing for king. One would be Joffrey, so this would be the Lannisters and all of them. Two would be Stannis. Three would be Renly. Now, Stannis would be going off of he is the rightful king because Joffrey is illegitimate. Renly would be going off of it because, one, he would also agree that, yes, Joffrey is a bastard and all that, but that Stannis would be a horrible king. Renly has more backing, and that Renly would be better king and would be the best for the common person. That would be his campaign. So Joffrey would basically, in the Lannister camp, would be just saying, Joffrey's legitimate. Give us proof that he's not. And that would kind of be like their argument. And Tywin would basically try to pull it on this persona that I am powerful, so it doesn't matter if he's legitimate or not. It's kind of like the Rhaenyra situation where Rhaenyra is kind of in this point where, yeah, a lot of people think, oh, these aren't actually, like, Laenor's kids. Doesn't matter. Rhaenyra has the power to enforce it. So that's kind of what Tywin's going to basically try to play on. So the idea here is going to be, there's going to be a couple changes. One, with this whole Great Council happening, the Starks are going to go. And, you know, some of the Northern Lords are going to come as well. Maybe the whole Northern Army comes to this meeting in Harrenhal. What is going to occur with the North? Are they still going to just leave, like the Seven Kingdoms? Are they going to actually back someone? And in this situation, given that war has not really broken out yet, Robb hasn't gained all of this respect yet from the Northern Lords, I think what we see here is instead Robb backs Stannis. Because again, the Starks are known for duty, honor, and everything for the Starks would point to Stannis being the king. So I think you see one faction in the North backing Stannis. Now, let's look at the other factions. Who would be backing them? So one faction you would have here would be the Lannisters. The Lannisters are going to back Joffrey, of course. Now, the question would be, who else would be backing them? And I'm not sure who else would be. I don't think they'd have any allies with the Dornish. The reach would be fully for Renly. The Dornish would be a very interesting one. Who would the Dornish go with? If they have a representative here, say, Oberyn comes, who are the Dornish going to choose at this great council? Would they go for someone like Stannis? Would they go for someone like Renly? Because again, you would think maybe they go for Renly, but the Tyrells, the Reach, and the Dornish don't really like each other. So would that push the Dornish instead to go for Stannis? Because Stannis would get justice and kill all of these Lannisters? I think it's possible that the Dornish might vote for Stannis. Now, Again, we look at some other interesting players here. The Greyjoys, what would they do in this scenario? I don't think they'd even bother showing up. I think they would still go independent with their kingdoms depending on if a war broke out, which I think if Tywin did lose this Great Council, there's still going to be war. So again, I don't think this Great Council actually solves anything, if you want me to be completely honest, because I think all it does is it's just a show of power, is what it would be. Now, what we could do is a wild card. This could be a wild scenario, is that with all of these people gathered, if Stannis is going to lose, which I think is still likely, I don't think the Dornish and the North backing Stannis would give him enough to win. Now, the real weird scenario with this would be, does Stannis use a shadow baby or some shadow babies taking out Renly? So then, because if he then took out Renly, you would assume the Baratheon loyalists then would go to Stannis. So then you would have the Reach pry the Lannisters together with their power, but then you would have the North's votes, the Dornish votes, and the Stormlands votes. Again, it'd be a very interesting situation. It'd be, in my opinion, it'd be very close to a tie. You'd also have to be looking at, could the Lannisters sway other lords to their side because of gold and because of this or that? It's possible. But the problem is, if a shadow baby's not used and Renly is kind of the clear-cut winner probably in this scenario, I don't think anyone's going to leave like Renly or Stannis' side to go to Tywin when Tywin looks like he's losing right now, even to Stannis. So again, we have that. Now the next problem we see, because again, there's two wild cards. One is Mel and her abilities and what Stannis is able to do at this Great Council if he was to lose. And two would be the idea of, what does Littlefinger do? What does Littlefinger have Lysa do? Does Lysa even show up at this Great Council? I think it's likely she just stays out of it and doesn't even maybe show up. Now, if she does show up, maybe it would be some representatives from the Vale. I don't think it'd be Lysa herself. So the question then would be, okay, Lysa, who does she tell them to back? And you've got to be thinking, Littlefinger doesn't want Stannis to win, obviously, because Stannis is not going to have Littlefinger on the small council. His room for growth is very low. I think you would have to think Littlefinger would want either Joffrey and the Lannisters to win, or Renly. He has a bit more wiggle room with Renly. Or he would want something like Renly dying to happen, because then you could see a war between Stannis and Tywin. So, again, I think Littlefinger is another weird scenario here, where I think what we could bring up is that I don't think Littlefinger could tell Lysa to back the Lannisters, because I just don't think the Vale would go for that. I think the Vale just would not do that at all. I think if the Vale would support anyone in this, and it's by Littlefinger like telling them to, or telling Lysa to tell them to, it would probably be Renly. So if this Great Council mattered, and there wasn't war after, I think Renly is the most likely to come out of it. Again, there's some wild card scenarios where that doesn't happen, where we see something again where Stannis kills Renly. Who knows in that scenario? But if we go off of this idea that Renly wins, what does Tywin do here? Because then, if Renly wins, basically, it's just public knowledge now. The Great Council has decided that Joffrey, Tommen, and Myrcella are a bastard. Now, are bastards. And again, during this, I would very much assume that Stannis, Renly, would bring up all of these bastards and put them and show them to this council that these children look a lot like Robert and have the Baratheon features, while Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen do not. So that would be, in my opinion, the way that they would go about that. They would basically, go through this book showing, okay, the lineage looks like this, basically doing what Ned did and what Jon Arryn and Stannis' findings already were, and they would present that case. So if Renly or Stannis are picked, it discounts the Lannisters completely. And another thing here would be, how would Renly handle the situation after becoming king, or Stannis? We know if Stannis becomes king, Tommen, Myrcella, Joffrey, they're gonna have to die. Cersei is gonna have to die. Jaime gonna have to die. They all broke oaths. They all committed treason. So in that scenario, Tywin is definitely going to war. If Stannis becomes king, let's say Renly dies to a shadow baby again, all-out war, this council doesn't really mean anything, and we go back to a scenario. But the difference in the scenario would be Robb would not be king of the North, because again, we see that Robb backs Stannis. So in this scenario, it would be, again, I don't know if the Dornish would actually join the war. I think the Dornish would have gone to the Great Council, supported who they supported, but I don't think they would have committed forces to this war with Stannis and Tywin. So I think this would have mainly have been the North and the Baratheon forces, the Stormland forces, against Tywin and the Lannisters and probably the Tyrells. Now, another thing that could change in this scenario, if the Tyrells want to, they could possibly marry Marjorie to Robb. Now, again, you're not going to become a queen for Marjorie, so again, I would still lean towards Marjorie and the Tyrells going to the Lannisters, especially if Stannis is the one to end up murdering Renly. We could also see a situation where Littlefinger sets up Stannis as being this person that kills Renly, like poisons him, but it's in a way that, like, it makes sense, because then you would see Stannis getting all the power. So again, a ton of scenarios could play out with Mel and Littlefinger that are very hard to predict. Even Varys. What would Varys want out of this situation? I think Varys at this point, again, like we've talked about, he would want a peace for now, right? And I don't think Varys would mind Renly becoming king. I don't think, again, people that want to politically maneuver and are not great on their allegiances like a Varys do not want Stannis to become king. So Varys would definitely be on the Renly camp as well. Now, with all of this being said, we see the North, the Stormlands versus the Lannisters and Tyrells. If we go down the Stannis wins, or the Stannis Tywin route, and that Stannis maybe wins this scenario because Renly dies, I think Tywin wins. I get Stannis is the best military commander, and he would have a sizable force, because again, you would have the Riverlands as well in that, but they would be backing Robb again. They would just, Edmure would basically be following Robb's lead. You would probably have a sizable army around 40 to 50,000 men. But again, you look at the other side, Tywin with the Tyrells, you'd have upwards, way higher men than that force. Now, again, you would see probably better military leadership on the side of Stannis, but on Tywin's side, you would just have more sheer numbers, you would have more riches, you would have more supplies. In that scenario, I think the Lannisters probably would come out on top, very similar to the way they did in the actual War of the Five Kings. Now, if Renly becomes king, and so we're going to go back, we're going to go to a different scenario. Let's say Renly wins. I think there's a chance here that, one, the Starks would just accept this. It's a great council. This is a lawful thing. They lost. Fine. I think if Stannis rebels, which he would, it's Stannis, he would rebel against this because he doesn't think that's right. I think Stannis would die. If he tries to go against Renly, he'd probably die. Now, if the Shadow Baby again, let's get off the Mel thing, because Mel can impact everything. Renly may be destined to die because of Mel. How does Renly deal with the Lannisters? How does he deal with that? Because in this scenario, he wins, he becomes king. What do the Lannisters do here? Because here's the thing, if Renly becomes king, it doesn't look good for the Lannisters. Because at this point, I think the Starks then would go, okay, the council decided, they would back Renly, and they would probably bend the knee. And that means the Riverlands as well. I think at this point, Dorne and the Vale would also just join in and say, okay, fair enough, they won. I think Tywin either would... There's two ways Tywin goes here. One, Tywin just says, screw it. There's nothing he can do. He allows either Jaime to take the Night's Watch, so he goes to the Wall, Cersei and her children to be exiled, and he just kind of starts over. Maybe he gets another wife. He tries to have some kids. Tyrion maybe stays and is his heir for now, which is not great for Tywin. And they just kind of try to restart. I could see that, because that's the way the Lannisters live on. If Tywin fights it, he's not going to win the war. He's just not. Unless Stannis helps him and takes out Renly. But let me know what you guys think about the scenario. I think the idea of a great council is very unrealistic with how the story was going. I just don't see any way that that would have occurred. But if it did occur, and we saw all of these sides going for whatever, what would happen? And another part of this that I think is interesting, I'm thinking about while doing the outro, I think the Greyjoys, seeing the way the wind's turning, would also try to attack the Lannisters at this point as well. So again, it's a tough scenario to look at, and there's multiple ways you can go with it. So let me know what you guys think about a Great Council. And again, the timing definitely matters a ton, because at the time that Catelyn suggests this Great Council to prove that, oh, these Lannister children, you know, they're illegitimate, it was too late. Like, people already had this rumor and idea that, oh, okay, Joffrey's a bastard. They didn't really care, right? Like, there was nothing they could do about it. The Lannisters were holding power as of right now, and yeah, it was up to Stannis or Renly to take that power out of them. So to me, I don't think that would have done anything. We also saw that Stannis and Renly were not going to be able to compromise. Tywin at this point, I don't think was going to compromise. Maybe he compromises with the North for a ceasefire so we can deal with either Stannis or Renly. Again, tough scenario, but let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye, guys.